I mean, heartbreaker. First I want to thank our fans for obviously just continuing to do what they do and showing up as they do every night. Um, I thought we played really good basketball for the first 26 minutes. Have a 16-point lead and just doing a lot of the right things. Early we got rattled by their pressure and had 5 quick turnovers, and thought we did a better job for the next 20 minutes of not letting their pressure bother us. And we talked about in film just not being casual and not being lazy with getting open and passing. And we had a stretch there where we're up 16 and 3 straight turnovers on just Tahad not getting open, and I think Sebastian and Keyshawn just throwing lazy passes, and they did an unbelievable job of executing and just converting off those turnovers. So, we I think fatigue set in a little bit, and ultimately that was the difference in the game right there. Is we just weren't able to take care of the ball, and they made shots after we turned the ball over, so they made us pay. So, got down 12 with 5:08 left, and they just continue to battle and continue to fight back, and they just don't have a lot of quitting them, and really proud of that. But we just got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, and we can only look within and only just be accountable for our mistakes that we made against their pressure. That ultimately was what the difference in the game was.
Coach, sports information came in and said you guys were on the call with the SEC. Can you walk us through the explanation of that final sequence there and what they told you about the clock?
I don't have a clear understanding still, so I still got to gather more information and get an understanding as far as what their determination was. I don't want to keep you guys waiting much longer, so I don't have a clear understanding of what their reasoning behind what they were going off of, and so we're going to gather more information, and hopefully we can kind of elaborate on it. But just from the angles that I saw, it looked like the ball was out of his hands on the red light on the scoreboard that we were looking at. But I would imagine that they had a different angle that they were looking at to determine that the ball wasn't out of his hands. So I'm just trying to get clarity on a couple things. The ball on the free throw with 2.6 seconds left. I'm not sure if the ball hit the backboard. We had this happen with, I think, Simeon Bowers our first year, where we were trying to miss intentionally, and he throws it off the backboard, and we told him to just hit the rim, and they ended up blowing it dead right then and there, which I mean, I don't know. I'm not an official, and I would never be an official because those guys have an impossible job. But from looking at it, if it's not clear that the ball hits the rim on a free throw, my determination would be you'd blow it dead right then and there just to look. But that didn't happen, so I'm not sure where they got the .6 from after that. So that's just some questions that I got to ask. But once I get a full rundown, because that was going to take a while, and I got to get on to Arkansas. So I'll get debrief from John, and I'll make sure that I communicate everything very thoroughly with all of you as far as what they told us, so you guys can have a better understanding of what why they made that decision.
Stephen, you got an early update on Philip Jovic and how he's doing?
Yeah, I wasn't really able to talk to Clark after the game. Was a little preoccupied, but it sounded. I mean, he I don't know. I don't want to elaborate on it too much, but Philip's a tough kid, and if he's not able to come back into the game, like obviously he's in a little bit of pain. So I'll get with Clark and figure out where he's at. But it's just him not being in was huge because it led to guys having to play a few too many minutes, and man, just with Philip being out right then and there, and then you got Abdul, who hasn't been able to play and God knows how long, and Mech being out for the season. Like, our depth is just so limited right now, and I would have loved to have pressed this team for 40 minutes because you saw how they just kicked the ball over the gym late. Like, they're not great. While they're a great pressing team, they are not good against pressure, and we don't have the depth to do it. And that's on us as a staff. But obviously, we've run into a string of just unfortunate luck with some injuries. So not sure. I'll get an update on Phillip and try and get that to you guys.
Coach, second straight game Tahad Pettifer coming off the bench. Magwood gets the start. Tahad had 11 for the night, 9 of those in the first half. Did you see some improvement on what you were looking for him, or still kind of looking on what he needs to fix to get back in that starting role and be a leader for you guys?
Yeah, just a coach's decision and some carryover from the Georgia game. So Tahad understands what the expectations are, and if he continues to handle his business off the floor, then I hope to see him back in the starting lineup on Saturday.
Stephen, did you feel like they changed anything with their defense in the second half to get those turnovers again, or is it just like you were saying earlier, just more of you guys not doing what y'all needed to do like you did in the first half?
No, they didn't change a whole lot, honestly. I think we just I think Tahad got tired, and he kind of ran to the corner. And when you get that ball in the deep corner, it's really hard to get out of, especially when they have good athletes and good size. And credit to Jakari Lane and those guys. They just they're really quick and really active, and they play hard, and they just do a really good job of disrupting you. And Ali Diba had a lot of big minutes for him. Federico came in and was a really big presence defensively. So they just were really active with their pressure late in the game as the game went on, and we just kind of got the ball into bad spots and threw really two uncharacteristic passes that really cost us. And instead of just taking our time, I'd rather have a 5-second call than to do what we did on both of them, because then we could set our defense. One of the things that we talked about in our press was having our 2s and 3s get down the floor to spread out. So when you turn the ball over, you have no one that can run back in transition and get to those shooters. And, they made us pay for it. So, credit to them. They made plays in pressure as the game went on. And, we made some really silly mistakes.
Stephen, just that final 0.6 seconds there, just the emotional swing of seeing it go through. The arena erupts. It's chaos. It's pandemonium. Then they go to the scorer's table. They rule it off. I'm interested in that moment, what the officials say to you and what your line of communication is in that moment.
Yeah, there was zero communication. So, they didn't say a word. They just said it was no good and ran off the floor. So I probably wouldn't want to talk to me in that moment anyway. So I get why they'd run away from me. Yeah, I mean, just from the angles that I saw, it looked like it was off his fingers, But that was just – I don't have all the same angles they have. So I'm just looking at an iPad – and it looks like on the clock it says 0.2, but obviously like that. So I was like on the floor, I'm like, shit, we just won the game. Like, oh, wow. So to go from that to, obviously the crowd sees it on the big jumbotron. They think it's good, and everyone thinks that the game's over. And I'm just trying to sit there and be like, just hold on, you just never know. And sure enough, they made a decision that it was, I don't know. It was on his fingertips. So, yeah, it's devastating. But I told the guys, like, we have one choice. Like, what else are we gonna do? Like, what the fuck else are we gonna do? Are we gonna sit here and just pout about it, or are we gonna get on to the next one? Like, I'm so excited to get here tomorrow morning and just start grinding again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm proud of these kids, man. Like, and I don't really I don't care about what people think, but like, man, like, I'm like, with 0.4 seconds, we're down 4, and we go to overtime. We're down 12 with 5:08, and we damn near win the game. Like, we got something in there, we got something in there. So I'm incredibly proud of their grit and their fight. We just got to be, we let 3 seconds. So I asked the guys, like, how many seconds does it take to turn the ball over? Maybe, yeah, or a second, just to make it simple, okay? We let 3 seconds impact 8 minutes of basketball. Think about that. You let 3 seconds impact 8 minutes of basketball. Come on, man. Can't do that. That's part of growing. That's part of learning. That's just part of, going through shit together, And this team's been through a lot of shit together. Sorry, I keep cursing. Apologize, Jan. We've been through a lot of stuff together, and I'm excited for them to see some positive results, because they deserve it. They really do. They've worked their tails off, and they've stayed connected, and for the most part, and they've been locked in, and they want to do the right things. So we just got to keep plugging away and just just keep doing what we do, and just try and get ready for the next one.
Coach, 8 minutes for Caden, 9 for Simon. What did you see out of those guys, and what do they need to do to continue getting playing time?
Caden came in and was disrupted by their ball pressure and had some quick turnovers. And, I thought he did a really good job in the Georgia game of, handling their pressure early. But, A&M's just way more physical with their press, and, it disrupted him. So I would have liked to have played Caden more. I just didn't feel like he was able to handle that pressure. And, obviously it bothered him. So that was the biggest thing, because offensively I have a ton of confidence in Caden. I really do. Defensively he had 3 silly fouls at Georgia, which is why he wasn't really, kind of in that rotation late. But tonight it was, his offense, he had, three turnovers, and that makes it really hard when they're pressing the entire game to just continue to go back to him. Simon came in and gave us some great minutes. He was in there on that unfortunate stretch against pressure. That had nothing to do with him, because he's at half court. He's an outlet. But I want to say before that he was like plus 10 or something. Hit a big mid-range jump shot. Had a big steal in transition. Thought he did a really good job of defensively just kind of sitting down and guarding. So, if he continues to do those things, he'll see more minutes. So it was good to get a little contribution from him off the bench.
Coach Sebastian had a really good game in Athens, but didn't find the scoring column tonight. Had 11. How much of that is a point of emphasis on getting more aggressiveness from him, both with the ball in his hands and playmaking without the ball in his hands?
Yeah, I said coming in, when we had my presser on, what was that, Monday? On Monday, that this would be a good game for him, because against pressure, ball comes in, you throw it back to the 4-man, which we, every time we did, we got really good stuff. And Sebastian is just really good at just bringing it up, because he moves so fast and he's under control at the same time. You don't want to get in front of him. He's like a train. So I knew this would be a good game for him, because he'd be able to kind of get downhill and get to the rim, and he makes good decisions with the ball. So it was great to see him be more aggressive. Love to see him shoot a couple threes. Obviously, the free throw line is something that he's just got to continue to improve on. But I thought a lot of really good things. That he was way more productive in his minutes tonight. Plus 10, the plus minus. So he's such a special talent, special kid, special player. So gonna need obviously, if Phillip's out, I'm gonna need him to have a lot of step up. All right, Coach. Thank you. Thanks, guys.